which means we are going to be waiting for this thing to start firing up. And it looks like the data is now being sent. So if you're not a regular here, we broadcast on Twitter, on Facebook, and on YouTube. And we got to wait for all of those things to sync up and get online. And it looks like we're there. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney based out of Scottsdale, Arizona. My team and I, over the course of many years, have helped thousands of people facing criminal charges go through the justice system. And over the course of those years representing good people, we have seen a lot of problems in the criminal justice system. Specifically, we're talking about misconduct involving police officers, prosecutorial malfeasance, political problems. We see judges doing bad things. And so we started this show called Watching the Watchers to hold them accountable. We want to call them out on their misconduct, on their misbehavior, because in our opinion, sunlight is the best disinfectant. We want to bring out these issues to the public and talk about these things in an open forum with the hope that maybe the people in charge, the people who run these things, do something to improve the justice system and improve the lives of everybody that it touches. And on this show today, we're going to be talking about, like everybody today, the presidential debate. Last night, Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. This is not a political channel, so we're not going to be analyzing all of the little, political spats and the back and forth and what an epic disaster the entire night was. But we are going to talk about the criminal justice issues that were brought up. If you remember, when Chris Wallace originally announced that he was going to be hosting this debate, the debate commission came out and they told us that last night we were supposed to be talking about these issues. Specifically, we were going to talk about the Trump and Biden records. We got a little bit of that. We also were supposed to be talking about race and violence in our cities. And, the whole thing just kind of turned into a big disaster, really. I mean, it was one of the worst things I think I've ever seen on TV. And I don't just mean presidential debates. I mean, I think it's the worst thing I've ever seen on television ever. It was a poor spectacle of leadership just across the board. And I was sorely disappointed as an American, just as a person, as an American, to think that these two people, plus that moderator, this group of individuals was going to be discussing the future of the country, the future of America, the future of the world in a lot of ways. It was disappointing. I was not happy about it, but I don't think the rest of the country was either. I don't think there's anybody who walked away from this thing thinking that that was a win. The people who won were the people who didn't watch. The people who won were the people who are sort of like myself, advocating for smaller government, less influence from the federal government, less influence from these two knuckleheads who are up there screaming at each other for 90 minutes and not actually providing any real value to the American people. So today we're going to talk a lot about that. We've got clips about court packing. We've got clips about Breonna Taylor, the First Step Act, all of the criminal justice issues, the things that we care about, the things that are within our hula hoop, we're going to get to today. So if you're sick of the debate stuff, I apologize in advance, but we do have, we want to do some fact checking and hold each one of these candidates accountable to their records, because they've been in office. Trump's been in office for 3.5 years now. Joe Biden's been in office for 47 years. Yesterday, we did a deep dive analysis on specifically what we were hoping to see from these individuals. We went through both of their records and we want to do a sort of compare and contrast. Now that we know a little bit more about what these people stand for, now we can see how they performed last night and then look at what they said and compare that to their records. So we have a lot to get to today. Let's jump into it. Let me give you a little bit of an outline about some of the things that we're going to be talking about. These were the questions or the sort of criminal justice issues that I was able to identify last night, or at least the ones that are worth talking about. There's more here than was there's less here than was covered in the entirety of the debate, but these were sort of the big things that stood out as it relates to criminal justice. We're talking about court packing. That happened early on in the debate. We have a clip about that. Breonna Taylor came up last night, but by name. I mean, actually, Chris Wallace mentioned her name and then Joe Biden mentioned her name. And if you're not familiar with this channel or a regular here, we have been covering this case highly in depth, basically almost every day, talking about it for the last 2 weeks, because there's been a lot of malfeasance going on in that case, in my opinion. We also discussed this case way back in March. We've been following along Breonna Taylor very closely. We have more news on that, and we're going to use the debate to segue into that story. We're going to save that for the latter part of the hour. We also talked about, we heard from Donald Trump. He said he let people out of jail. We're going to talk about that in the First Step Act. Got to talk about the 1994 crime bill, which was mentioned around 28 minutes in, very close in time to when he was saying he was letting people out of jail. We also are going to have to discuss this Proud Boys issue and the Antifa issue, because this came up and this is making huge waves throughout everywhere, right? This was, I think, an issue that the Democrats and the left have really seized on, saying, Trump wouldn't disavow these people. And quite frankly, I didn't even know who these people were, the Proud Boys. We're going to talk about that and talk about who they are and why Trump didn't disavow them and all of that stuff. I'll give you some speculation on that. And then, of course, the Fine People comment. Biden specifically brought out this idea that Donald Trump called a bunch of neo-Nazis fine people. He did not do that. This is one of the biggest hoaxes I have seen. It been perpetrated by the mainstream media for a long time. We have the official transcripts. We have Joe Biden's statement as well. We're going to talk about that. And so this is really what I want to boil down in on this issue. The debate last night, a lot of talk about the economy, a lot of talk about COVID-19, a lot of talk about, there actually wasn't really much talk about anything. These were the things that they were trying to talk about, but it turned into a huge dumpster fire, as people are saying. So we're going to start going through this list and we're going to start dissecting it piece by piece. We're going to start with some of the boring stuff first. Let's talk about court packing. So this was one of the first questions that Joe Biden got from Chris Wallace, and it's an important question. This is not one of the juicy sort of criminal law, Breonna Taylor type of exchanges here, but this is a critical issue because if the Republicans appoint or actually nominate and confirm Amy Coney Barrett, it's going to change the balance of the court for probably the next 40 to 50 years. This is a major issue that I think is not getting a lot of attention, or at least as much attention with the sort of the popular component of mainstream America. The legal people like me, the political junkies like me, we're highly invested in this, and I've been covering it a lot here on this channel. But the general public, the 67 million people who watched last night, they may not necessarily understand what court packing is or why it's such a big deal. And so before we go into the clip, I just want to give you a very brief recap on what that means and how that works in the United States. So when it comes to court packing, what we're talking about is this idea that we want to expand the number of judges on the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court at this moment in time has had 9 judges for 150 years. So 9 justices for all 150 years. And it's important to note that this is actually not required. It's not mandatory in the Constitution. Congress can actually expand or contract the size of the Supreme Court. They haven't done it in 150 years, but they could do it. And since Biden, simply had not commented on this issue about whether they're going to change the balance of power in the court or whether they're going to expand or pack the court, this came up specifically during the debate. So here's what this would look like. This was the court when Justice Ginsburg was on it, right? We have 4 judges who are reliably liberal, 5 judges, the conservative wing of the court, who are reliably conservative, and now we have a vacancy. So it looks like this, right? And this is where Donald Trump came in and appointed his 3rd nominee, Amy Coney Barrett, to replace that vacancy. And that would seriously tip the balance of power in the courts. They would be reliably conservative at that point. You would have 6 reliably conservative judges on the court, and then the left-wing liberal wing of the court would really be minimized down to 3. So it would be a 6-3, which would be different from a 5-4, which is what we had when Ruth Bader Ginsburg was on there. So if we are in a position where the Democratic Party seizes control or wins control, or however you want to phrase that, of all 3 branches of government, then they would have the opportunity, because they have the executive branch, which would sign off on a bill from Congress. Congress would have, it would originate in the House, pass the Senate, they would reconcile the bill, they would send it over to the president. A Democrat at that point, would then sign it, and the court could be expanded, and it could look like this. So now the next president, the next Democratic president who got this bill through and signed into law, would then immediately be able to just go ahead and appoint 4 more judges just right out of the gate. Wouldn't have to wait for any of these 6 reliably conservative judges to retire or pass away or be impeached or removed from office or one of those things. They would just go ahead and say, okay, cool. We're just going to add 4 more or 5 more or 6 more, or whatever they want, because they have control of that. Then they could appoint their judges because they have control of the Senate. Also, they would get them all confirmed with a simple majority vote, so 51 votes or 50 votes plus the vice president, and they could just pack the court. So it is a big deal, right? This could change the fundamental nature of the judiciary for a very, very long time, and rightfully, Joe Biden was asked about it. Now, we have the clip. Chris Wallace, like I said, this was one of the earliest clips right in the beginning, and I was able to pull this from a website called rev.com. They have a great little transcription service. We use it a lot in our videos here and the things we do at our law firm. And what they did is they actually put a transcript on their website so we can watch the video and we can read along with the transcript and you can see exactly what was being said. So let's take a look at this first clip from Joe Biden. Chris Wallace asks him specifically, what are you going to think about in terms of packing the court? So here is that clip.
Mr. Vice President, if Senate Republicans, we were talking originally about the Supreme Court here, if Senate Republicans go ahead and confirm Justice Barrett, there has been talk about ending the filibuster or even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact, it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now.
Are you going to pack the
Make
court?
sure you, in fact, let people know you're a senator. I'm not going to answer the question.
Why would you answer that question?
The question is,
the radical left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe? Who's on your list?
Right. Gentlemen, I think
this is so
unprecedented.
He's going to pack the court.
We have ended.
All right. So, yeah, that's about kind of how the entire debate went, right? They were asked questions. Nobody wanted to answer anything. This was a pretty critical question to answer. I wanted to hear what Joe Biden had to say about it. I think a lot of lawyers did. A lot of people in the criminal legal community were all sort of, hey, what's going to be happening here? It's looking like, Joe Biden's way up in the polls. Didn't have a bad debate last night. This may be a real possibility if there's a blue wave that happens and the Democrats take control of all 3 branches or of the 2 branches of government. They'll then have the opportunity to take advantage or to actually transform that 3rd branch, the judiciary, into another Democratic basically institution for a long time. So very important question. Joe Biden didn't want to answer it. There is a lot of a lot of pushback on the Supreme Court going both directions. If you're a Republican, you're like Senator Tom Cotton. He said that Biden is afraid of losing or alienating the far left flank, losing the election. And he's going to one side of this. He's taking an extreme position, sort of indicative of a lot of the arguments you hear from the right. He's saying that if they pack the court, we're going to lose the right to religious freedom. We're going to lose the Second Amendment. We're going to use tax dollars, what he says, for abortion on demand. We're going to have, leading up to 9 months of pregnancy, giant corporations, all sorts, sort of the really, really, really extreme version of what's going to happen if the Democrats take control. On the other side, you have the Democrats. I'm getting a lot of emails in my inbox from candidates running saying that if Amy Coney Barrett is appointed onto the Supreme Court, this is the end of women as we know it. This is the end of, of abortion. We're not going to be able to do anything. We're going to be getting abortions in back alleys with coat hangers and things. I mean, really gross, colorful language is being used on both sides. I don't think it's probably either one of those things. It's probably somewhere in the middle, as most things are, but all of the politicians are going to be scrambling to either side of the aisle to make hay out of this whole situation. Now, it is still important that Joe Biden tells us what he's going to do. And if you back up on the clip, he says, whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. Right? That's exactly what he says at the very beginning of this clip. He says, whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should go out and vote now, to let your senators. Anyways, it's a non-answer. He doesn't answer it at all. He hasn't disclosed what his position is on that, in large part because I think there's some truth to what the Republicans are saying. They're saying that if he says, I'm not going to pack the court, he's going to immediately alienate a big swath of the Democratic Party who want to see that change. They want that. It's part of the rules. The Constitution says you can do it. And the Republicans here, they're kind of playing a dangerous game to a certain degree. They're saying, hey, we have the election. Trump opened the entire debate on this point. He said, hey, we won the election. We have the right to vote. I'm a president for 4 years, not 3.5 years. We have a vacancy on the Supreme Court during my term. I have the right to appoint somebody, and he's right. He does. If the Democrats win the Senate, the House, and the presidency, now it's their turn, right? Elections have consequences, and so they have the full authority, the full capability, constitutional and everything, to go and pack that court. So a lot of the liberals, a lot of the Democratic Party is saying, hey, if Biden doesn't do that, we're going to be upset about it. And I don't blame them, right? They have the right to do it if they win. And so Biden is taking a very middle of the road position here. And this is the theme that you're going to see throughout the rest of the debate. Some pretty important questions were asked. Both of these candidates didn't want to take a real strong position going either way. And who's left with nothing to show for it? Well, the American people. We have no good takeaways from this thing. I don't think anybody walked out of this going, you know what? I'm in love with that candidate. I can't wait to vote for him. It was just a gross display all around. So we'll see if we know more about court packing from Joe Biden anytime soon. I don't think he's going to take a hard position on this issue moving forward. So we're just going to presume that it's open in the air until we hear otherwise. He gave a non-answer there, and I don't expect that to change moving forward. The next issue that we talk about is the 1994 crime bill. So this was something that I thought we were going to get a little bit more play from, and we really didn't. And Donald Trump goes through here in this clip. He's talking about the 1994 crime bill and the First Step Act. And then factcheck.org came out with a fact check on Joe Biden. But before we get into some of that stuff, let's listen to the clip. This was Donald Trump, Joe Biden last night talking about the 1994 crime bill and the First Step Act.
President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with racism?
He did a crime bill, 1994. Where you call them super predators, African Americans, the super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you a super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the 1990, and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time, because they saw what you did. You call them super predators, and you've called them worse than that. Because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals, total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day, and they put up their hands, and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases radical left. And they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. So yeah, that was a big, long answer. Trump got his 2 minutes. And, I think he actually did a pretty good job of fleshing out a lot of what we talked about yesterday, right? We went through Joe Biden's record. He had sponsored or co-sponsored or co-authored or authored a number of different bills. all throughout the 80s and into the 90s. We had the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 86 and 88. We have the Comprehensive Act. Earlier than that, we've got the 1994 Crime Bill. We have specific sentencing reforms that highly penalized, the crack cocaine epidemic, which really did hit a huge portion of the African-American community throughout the United States back in the 80s. And so Trump is kind of on this, this sort of scattered rant about what Joe Biden's record looks like. And there is some truth to that, in my opinion. I mean, we went through this yesterday. Joe Biden has a very long record on criminal justice and incarcerating people and passing laws that would help enable states and governments and attorneys generals and civil forfeiture laws and all of that. Don't need to rehash that out again today, but there is some fact checking going on here, right? Donald Trump said specifically that he got the endorsement from the sheriff of Portland. Well, not really, because we see that the sheriff in Portland doesn't support him. And of course, that was right there on Twitter the following hour. He says, Sheriff Reese says in tonight's presidential debate, the president said that the Portland sheriff supports him as the Multnomah County sheriff. I've never supported Donald Trump and will never support him. And, there were some other things that we were seeing here. Donald Trump, and I had not heard this, but Donald Trump said that Joe Biden called black people these super predators. And I thought that was a Hillary Clinton thing. I thought that that's what she said, because she got beaten up pretty badly about that. Now, she was also in the White House when Joe Biden was a senator. A lot of presidents were in the White House when Joe Biden was a senator. And she said specifically super predators during that time. I think she may have been in the Senate. I don't remember specifically what she had to do. But when Donald Trump accused Joe Biden of that, I just had not heard that. So we tried to look that up. And I'm not, well, let's see. We have another clip here from Joe Biden. This was back in the U.S. Senate. So we wanted to see, could we find this super predator clip? Could we see him saying this thing? Because I had not heard it. And we found a clip, but let's see if he actually uses that word.
They will, or a portion of them will, become the predators 15 years from now. And Madam President, we have predators on our streets that society has, in fact, in part because of its neglect, created. Again, it does not mean because we created them that we somehow forgive them or do not take them out of society to protect my family and yours from them. They are beyond the pale, many of those people. Beyond the pale. And it's a sad commentary on society. We have no choice but to take them out of society.
Which, I mean, that statement, first time I actually heard that, that's basically the opposite of what we do here at our firm, right? We have a lot of people who get in trouble, who hire us, and we work with them. I would never say that they are beyond the pale. They're human beings. They're going through a difficult situation. They have life circumstances that many of us didn't grow up with or didn't experience in our lives. They're good people, the vast majority of them. A lot of people have drug problems. They've got family problems, alcohol problems. They've been abused. They've been just beaten to death in the course of their life. And their culture that they've been, kind of brought around in is something that is helping contribute to their delinquency or their criminality. And those people are not beyond the pale. They're not broken. They're good people who just need a little bit of help, a little bit of coaching. And so what we want to do is make sure that the criminal justice system reflects that. Talk about it all the time on this channel. Humanity. Why are we lacking in such humanity? It's not okay, and I totally disagree with what Joe Biden said right there, but I didn't hear him call anybody a super predator. That was actually reserved for Hillary Clinton, which we did find. So I was trying to find what that is. Now, I don't think it matters either way, super predator or predator. I mean, he's talking about the same type of thing here, but we just wanted to get clear on that because I thought Trump was a little bit off, at least in relation to that term. So here is Hillary Clinton, who was the one who actually used the term.
To big drug cartels. They are not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators. No conscience, no empathy. We can talk about why they ended up that way, but first we have to bring them to heel. And the president has asked the FBI to launch a very
Yeah, and she got a lot of flack for that back when she was running for president. So, this was something that really was bipartisan. It's not a left or right thing. Back in the 1980s and the 1990s, there was a really big push to, fight the war on drugs. Both the Democrats and the Republicans were running full steam with this. The Democrats actually tried to seize this mantle of being weak on crime. The Republicans, prior to Bill Clinton, had a lot of electoral success by saying the Democrats were weak on crime. They took that issue over, and then the Democrats tried to seize it when they got got into power. Bill Clinton took the White House, and then Joe Biden was in the Senate, and he was the author of the Senate 1994 crime bill. Joe Biden actually authored that bill, and we went through that yesterday, so I'm not going to rehash that. But the point, Trump's point remains. Joe Biden is somebody who, for the last about two and a half decades and longer than that, when he's been in the Senate, has been very pro justice. Pro lock people up, pro civil forfeiture, pro arrest people, put them in prison for first offense, crack cocaine offenses, and all these, mandatory minimum sentencings. And a lot of the things that we see today in our justice system were all passed as part of the 1994 crime bill, which the biggest crime bill that has ever been passed in the United States. We're talking about 100,000 new police officers. We're talking about 356 pages. We've got, over $5 billion or $10 billion for different things like building private prisons or building prisons, or, a lot went into that bill. And so Donald Trump was trying to flesh some of that out. And, I don't know that the public really picked up on that. I don't know if the African-American community picked up on that. There were some falsities in Donald Trump's soliloquy, as there usually are, but this was something that was important, and he's sort of right on that. Joe Biden has a lot of history in the criminal justice space, and I'm glad that was at least discussed. I don't think it was highly effective, but it was good that it was discussed because it is important. What I was concerned about is that we were going to see a lot of these senators, a lot of these people now, because justice reform is kind of a popular movement now. People are seeing that there are these major problems that have been in our system for decades. They want some reform. They want some changes. And so I was sort of the mindset that Joe Biden was going to come out and disavow the police. He didn't do that. He kind of kept mum on his prior record, didn't really defend it or talk much about it. And that's what we're left with. So not much more there. We're going to see if this 1994 crime bill or if Joe Biden's record come up, any further. But there wasn't a lot of detail on that. I think in large part because Donald Trump's not particularly good at sort of reciting a lot of those facts. If you remember, if you've been following the political scene for a while, there was a debate back in, I want to say it was 2008. I think Mitt Romney was running in the presidential primaries. And when he was debating against John McCain, there was a scene when he actually went through and he listed like 6 to 8 facts. He said, well, the budget here is this, it should be this. And the people who, the percentage is this, and this is this. And he was very, kind of a technocrat. That's kind of how he did things. And that type of presentation may have been more effective, but Donald Trump is not like that and not even close to that. So we saw that last night. He brings up a couple little nuggets here and there, but ultimately I don't think it really helped anybody understand Joe Biden's record as it relates to criminal justice reform. And Chris Wallace did basically no job of pushing them to, answer those questions like packing the court or any of those other things. So that was the other little nugget of the criminal justice reform, just a short about 2 minutes that Donald Trump brought up. Couple falsities there. Sheriff didn't endorse him. Joe Biden, that we were able to find, did not say super predator. Not saying he didn't, but that was a Hillary Clinton thing. So Donald Trump may have gotten those two little nuggets confused. The next issue that we saw in the debate was when Chris Wallace asks a specific question about whether or not they can trust, who can trust the voters, or who can the voters trust over the next 4 years. And Joe Biden goes into his 2 minutes, and he's talking about equity and equality and decency and all of these things. Then he brings up this thing that has been just irritating me for about the last several years, actually. It's what is known as the Fine People Hoax. If you Google that, you're going to find a lot of information about this. The Fine People Hoax is it's essentially a hoax. There was this issue that took place in Charlottesville. Donald Trump was making some commentary about that. This was several years ago, and he made this statement about people who were on both sides of the pulling the Confederate statutes down argument. He was saying that there were very fine people on both sides, and so the media and Joe Biden and a lot of other people were bringing up this idea that that Donald Trump was talking specifically about these neo-Nazis and calling them very fine people. And so when I originally first heard about this, I was like, did he endorse neo-Nazis? Donald Trump actually endorsed neo-Nazis? Like, that's insane. That's a huge problem. So I went back, and when this originally came out, I read the transcript, and he's talking about fine people on both sides having a polite debate. Well, we have the transcript here. I'll show it to you here in a minute. But I've been following this along, and I see it pop up all the time. The media likes to talk about it. It's just very fine people. And Joe Biden specifically brought it up in this debate. And I take a lot of issue with that because one of two things is happening. One, he knows that this is a hoax. He's read the transcript and he knows that that is not what Donald Trump said. And he's repeating this lie, which in my mind would make him a liar because it's just a totally falsified, inaccurate statement. It's been proven wrong. There are transcripts and videos of it, and he repeats it all the time. So he's either flat out lying about it, or he's just incompetent and nobody on his team has told him, hey, this is not actually the truth. But you can make up your mind. Yes, we know politicians lie. The reason I have an issue with this one so badly is because this is sort of the issue that is really rallying people to call Donald Trump a racist. And, he wants, dead black people and Hispanic people. And he wants to kill people. And we see a lot of this from the left as we go through a lot of these issues. The Breonna Taylor case, the Ahmaud Arbery case, the Daniel Prude case, Rayshard Brooks. Anytime that there is a white cop who kills a black person, they say to some extent, there's indications, there's threads that run through these different media and the different stories that I read, that Donald Trump is somehow the figurehead of this white supremacist movement that is going around and killing black people. And I haven't seen any evidence of it, starting with the Fine People Hoax transcript. I have the transcript. We're going to get through it. But here right now is the clip from the debate last night where Joe Biden is specifically saying the Fine People Hoax. And so he brings it up. It's his own words.
My question for the two of you is, why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity and equality. It's about decency. It's about the Constitution. And we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole of America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people looked like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president has ever said anything like that.
Yeah, because he didn't. Yeah, and Donald Trump, you can hear him chiming in saying, well, he didn't finish the rest of the paragraph. He didn't finish the sentence. And that's exactly right. I mean, we have the transcript right here. I want to run you through it. And this was taken back from this interaction where Donald Trump was actually literally like duking it out with these reporters, and there's people on both sides talking about George Washington and Robert E. Lee and these different statutes coming down. And so when we go to the transcript, you'll see here that Donald Trump, he's getting into it. excuse me, inaudible themselves, inaudible. And you have some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. And this is what they take out of context. He said, you had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statute and renaming it Park from Robert E. Lee to another name. And so we see a lot of this, right? All over the country, they're taking down more statutes. This happened back in, I think it was 2017 when this was taking place in Charlottesville. And very heated discussion on these things, right? I don't have a particular vested interest in these statutes. I don't care too much about the statutes. If they don't want them up and they want to take them down, it's fine. I understand both sides of the argument, but it's not a make or break thing for me. I'm a proponent of history, but if there's a statute that offends half the country, okay, take it down. I can live with that. Don't really have too much interest there. So they're going through, they're duking this out. This initial paragraph gets taken out of context multiple times. And then we go to the next paragraph where Trump is still speaking, and he actually sort of puts some meat on the bones of what he just said. So he goes on and he says, how about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of him? You like him? Crosstalk again. Okay, good. Are we going to take down the statute, he says, because he was a major slave owner. Now, are we going to take down his statute? So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about neo-Nazis and the white nationalists because they should be condemned totally. But you had people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them coming out with black outfits and with helmets and with baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people. in the other group. And so he's not talking about the neo-Nazis or the white supremacists. He's talking about the other side that also have an argument that say, hey, this is part of our culture. This is part of our history. We want to keep the good stuff up and the bad stuff up. And, we support not renaming our schools and, sort of whitewashing the history that we grew up in. There's a valid argument there. This is part of our culture. It's part of our history. And he was talking about having those people a part of that conversation. He was talking about the people who wanted the statutes down and the people who wanted the statutes up, not about the neo-Nazis or the white supremacists. And so Joe Biden in his prior clip specifically said that I am, the reason why I'm running for president is because of what this president said about these fine people, but it's just not accurate. You can make other claims, you can make other, commentary about whether Donald Trump is a racist or not, but if you read the text of what he said, it's not accurate. It's unfair. And if Donald Trump had been out there last night making up these hoaxes about Joe Biden, I would be the first one to call them out as well. There's a lot of stuff that he said about Hunter Biden. There's a lot of stuff, about these Russian Moscow, dealings and all of that. I don't know what's going on with that because it's a news story right now. But if that's a hoax, happy to call that out. Happy to dive into those things and discuss it. But it's not something that is particularly relevant to what we're doing here on this channel because it's not about criminal justice reform. It's about him being charged with crimes, still under investigation. And if that turns out to be a hoax, I'll be the first one to come out here and say that was a political Republican hit job hoax. But we just haven't seen any evidence of that yet because it is ongoing. This one is clearly a hoax. This one was clearly brought up in front of a national stage, and he's doing it in order to, to make that whistle go off to indicate to people that Donald Trump is a racist. And it's just not true. It's unfortunate, right? I understand that this is a political commentary, political debate, and these guys are at each other's throats, but I would love to see a little bit more honesty from both sides. Now, that said, Donald Trump also, in a different clip, is doing some weird stuff. And this really caught me last night. So we were talking about Antifa and the Proud Boys, and there was this question from Chris Wallace about asking Donald Trump to disavow the white supremacist and the white nationalist, and he just didn't do it. He didn't do it at all. He didn't really do it. He just didn't do it. He tells him to stand back and stand by, and that is getting a lot of hay in the media today. So let's talk about that one because this one is, I think, going to be the most beneficial for the Democrats and the most troubling for the Republicans. And so in this clip, Chris Wallace, for some reason, asks Trump specifically, sort of calls him out on this issue. He says, listen, I'm going to ask you here and now to condemn these white supremacist groups. Will you do it? And it was weird to me that he didn't do that with Joe Biden. He didn't ask Joe Biden about Antifa. He didn't ask Joe Biden about BLM or any of those other organizations. He just went right after Trump and asked him to disavow the white supremacists that are in Kenosha and in Portland. And I don't know about you, but I have been on this channel for a long time covering these issues. We spent a ton of time on Kyle Rittenhouse. We're still covering that story. That all happened in Kenosha. Didn't hear anything about the Proud Boys on that. Didn't hear anything about white supremacists in that organization. We covered it here. You can go back and watch the old videos. Were these white supremacists? Was Kyle Rittenhouse a white supremacist who was part of this Proud Boys group? I don't know. And if he was, are the Proud Boys racist? I never heard about that. And the only thing that I've been hearing about and covering on this channel, it's been mostly related to BLM and Antifa. And I'm a criminal defense attorney. My position is I want justice reform, and I empathize with a lot of the issues that BLM has with the criminal justice system. But from what we have seen in the news, on Twitter, what we've covered on this show, it has mostly been either one of those two groups who's predominantly been responsible for a lot of the mess that we see in Portland, a lot of the mess that we saw in Kenosha. We saw it here in Scottsdale. They were breaking into the Apple store right down the street at Scottsdale Fashion Square. And I never saw that this was all attributable to the Proud Boys or to the KKK or to any white supremacist group. So I thought, why is Chris Wallace even bringing this up? Why is he asking Donald Trump specifically about that when I have not seen any evidence of it? To me, the big elephant in the room has been BLM and Antifa, and he's not asking Joe Biden about that at all. Instead, he's going over to Donald Trump and asking him specifically to disavow a group that, as far as I have been able to gather, has not been a a major component of the problem that we're seeing in our various cities around the country. So here is that exchange.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared
to do
specifically
that, but
do it?
Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
Do you want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name.
supremacists and
Who would
white
you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing.
FBI director
This is a left-wing problem.
White supremacist. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got to be
not
kidding.
militia. That's what his FBI. FBI director
Gentlemen,
said.
Well, then you know what?
We're done, sir. We're moving on to the next. We're moving.
When a bat hits you over the head, that's not an idea.
Everybody in
Antifa
your
is
administration
bad.
tells you the truth has a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no ideas.
Antifa is a dangerous,
All right,
radical.
gentlemen, we're now moving on.
All right. Yeah, I mean, so painful to listen to. You know, I almost didn't even want to talk about this debate today. I already listened to it last night. I already got enough brain damage. I had to do show prep today, listen to it again, got another round of brain damage, and I just got my third round of brain damage listening to it again. A lot to unpack right there, but you know, the first thing that stood out to me is, of course, about Donald Trump sort of not disavowing the Proud Boys, right? And I didn't even know who the Proud Boys were. When I heard this last night, I thought I maybe had heard of their name before, but I just didn't know much or really anything about them. And so we did some deep dive into that today. But from the transcript that we just saw, it's pretty clear that he didn't disavow the Proud Boys. You know, he had the opportunity when that question was posed to him to disavow white supremacy. He could have easily said, yep, sure. Yeah, I 100% disavow white supremacy. That's what Chris Wallace was actually asking him about. You know, the white militants and the white supremacy. Donald Trump made a pretty big mistake here in terms of debate, in terms of arguing. Something we learn about in law school and in trial and doing, you know, DUI trials and domestic violence trials and all those things. What we're talking about is you never give the opposing side the opportunity to sort of carry the ball. So what Donald Trump did there by saying, hey, give me a name, give me any name that you want, I'll condemn them. He gave the ball to Joe Biden. He gave it to him and said, hey, you are now in control of this thing. What do you want to do with it? So Joe Biden took advantage of that and basically called out the Proud Boys, which is the Republican version of Antifa, from what I have gathered. We have some more information about what this organization looks like and what they do and stand for, and some interesting little tidbits about them. But by and large, what Donald Trump did is he gave Joe Biden full opportunity to ask him to condemn an organization that was helpful to Donald Trump. If Donald Trump would have just said, sure, who do you want me to say, Chris? Joe Biden in the background was saying, Proud Boys, get the Proud Boys. And Chris Wallace asked him specifically the white supremacists and the white militants or something to that effect. Donald Trump should have responded to Chris Wallace, not responded to Joe Biden. And so you can see him as he's going through his internal thought process, as he's sort of processing Proud Boys, then he's thinking about, who are the Proud Boys? Oh, yeah, they support me. If I disavow them, maybe they won't support me anymore. So he didn't. He said, stand back, stand by. And that is not a good look when there's 60-something million people watching you. And the question leading up to that question was about white supremacy. So I didn't even know who the Proud Boys were, but because they were tacked on to the end of the question, they're, you know, white supremacists, white militants. Joe Biden throws that in there, says the Proud Boys. Donald Trump picked up on the Proud Boys and then wouldn't disavow them. So for the average viewer, what you're thinking is, oh, well, they must be a white supremacist group because they came after the white supremacist question. Therefore, Donald Trump is refusing to disavow the white supremacist. Not a good look. And I was even watching that going, you know, come on, guys. Why can't Donald Trump just simply disavow the white supremacists? What is so complicated about that? But why can't Joe Biden also disavow Antifa? What is so complicated about that? You know, these Antifa people, I don't really know what they're standing for other than they're anti-fascist and they don't like buildings because they keep trying to burn them down. That's about it, right? To me, it seems like they're trying to undermine the capitalism and undermine the democracy and, call for radical reform and, kill all capitalists and things like that. That is not a good organization either. And so Chris Wallace, for some reason, didn't ask Joe Biden, a fair debate, a fair question. And he even prefaced this when he was talking to Donald Trump. He said specifically, hey, you've asked Joe Biden to condemn them. I'm not going to ask him, though, too. I know you've asked him, but I'm not going to ask him. I am, however, going to ask you to condemn a group that has really been a non-factor in a lot of this stuff that we have been seeing over the past 100 plus days since, in the aftermath of George Floyd. So Chris Wallace, if he wanted to be a fair and neutral moderator, he could have easily said, Joe Biden, how about you disavow the biggest group on your side of the aisle, Antifa, and Donald Trump, you disavow the biggest problem that we've identified on your side of the aisle, the Proud Boys. And both of these two knuckleheads, they could have easily condemned their sides, but they didn't. Joe Biden didn't disavow Antifa. Donald Trump didn't disavow the Proud Boys. And it's very frustrating for just an average viewer, a regular everyday American, to see both of these two guys fail to disavow these groups. And so I woke up and I started to think, okay, well, what about the Proud Boys? Who are these people? What do they do? And so let's dive into that. So according to Wikipedia, now Wikipedia, you can take it for what it's worth, but this is their statement. They say that the Proud Boys is a far-right, neo-fascist, male-only organization that promotes and engages in political violence. That's a pretty bad statement, right? That's not good. We don't want political violence. We don't want neo-fascists here. We don't want far-right organizations. None of that is good. They say that the group believes men, white men, and Western culture are under siege. Their views have some elements of the white genocide conspiracy theory, and on and on and on. You can read the article on there. A Southern Poverty Law Center calls them an alt-right fight club. FBI originally classified them as an extremist group with ties to white nationalism. 2 weeks later, an FBI official briefing Clark County, Washington law enforcement officials denied that it was their intent to classify the entire group in this manner and described that to a mistake and a misunderstanding. So these are the Proud Boys. This is sort of what they look like. So the West is the best. It's a group of men you can see here who are, they look pretty proud to me, I would say. The American flag, they, got a bullhorn here, got a vest on, couple vests, and it looks like they're marching across a bridge. And this is something that, I didn't know much about it. Call me ignorant, call me a fool, call me whatever you want. I just didn't know anything about it because I had not heard about them. I had heard the name of Gavin McInnes previously, but I didn't know much about it. I saw his name pop up, I think, when he got banned from a lot of the different online platforms. And this guy got deplatformed from YouTube and I think Twitter and some other places. And a lot of the right-wing commentators on Twitter and elsewhere, they were saying, well, this is the beginning of it. This is the beginning of the big tech media meltdown. They're going to start banning, it's going to start with Gavin and it's going to trickle down to everybody else. And before you know it, Rush Limbaugh is going to be canceled, and that's kind of where they were going with this. And I think that's where I remembered his name from, but I never followed him, never watched him, don't know much about him. And I really haven't seen anything in any of the news that we've covered about the Proud Boys. Seen a lot of BLM, seen a lot of Antifa, but not the Proud Boys. So we did a little bit of a deep dive into who these people are. And this is the Proud Boys founder. His name is Gavin McInnes. And there's not a lot of stuff really that I know about him other than that he went in 2017, he posted a video out there called The 10 Things I Hate About the Jews, which is not a good video. I don't know, what to call that other than, bigotry, anti-racial, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, commentary. That's exactly what it is. You can't make excuses for that. You can't talk that away. It's clearly what it is. He posts a video on the internet, 10 things I hate about the Jews. Not much else to discuss, right? Not okay, not good behavior. And that's not what we want. Now, there's another video here from something that he posted where he goes, I'm actually not even going to play it, but he goes through this video and he's talking about, what the Proud Boys stand for. He says, we're not racist. We don't do anything, wrong. We just love America. We love the Constitution. And he does say that I'm a chauvinist. That's, he's somebody who's a provocateur, no question about it. And the type of language that he's using is not okay with political discourse, in my opinion. And, for Trump to not disavow that is a little bit concerning, right? You would want him to disavow those people. But when we started looking further into it, I wasn't real sure how much Trump knew about it, and I'm not trying to make excuses for the guy, but I didn't know about it. And so I went looking through it myself, and here is what we found. So you can literally go on their website, and this is what they stand for. So I'm always skeptical when I hear somebody say somebody is something. Somebody puts a label on something. The Proud Boys are racist. The Proud Boys are white nationalists. BLM is black nationalists. BLM is racist, right? People say that all the time. Antifa is communist. They want to, okay, well, let me learn about these people. Who are they? What do they do? I know you've got a political position. Joe Biden has a position, right? He's going to view everything through his lens as a Democrat. Donald Trump's going to view everything as his lens through the Democrat, as a Republican. And there's something in the middle that usually is closer to the truth than anything else that these two people are saying. So if you go on the Proud Boys website, they actually have a website. They call themselves the Western Chauvinists. So you can see here, proudboysusa.com. They are Western chauvinists. And in that video that I played from Gavin, he talks about what chauvinism means. And he says that he pulls up a definition, and he says it's a very highly patriotic person who wants to display that aggressively. That's what chauvinism is. They go through, they detail some of their core values of the Proud Boys: minimal government, maximum freedom, anti-political correctness, anti-drug war, closed borders, anti-racial guilt, anti-racism, pro-free speech, pro-guns, glorifying the entrepreneur, venerating the housewife, reinstating a spirit of Western chauvinism. And they say specifically here, their sort of mission statement: though these are our central tenets, all that is required to become a Proud Boy is that a man declare he is a Western chauvinist who refuses to apologize for creating the modern world. We do not discriminate based upon race or sexual orientation. We are not an ism-ist phobic that fits the left's narrative. We truly believe that the West is the best and welcome those who believe in the same tenets as us all. And, they can post whatever they want on a website, I suppose. But we went through it a little bit further, and I was trying to identify whether, this group was a white supremacist group, or if this is the right's version of Antifa or something, in close parallel to that, because we know a lot about Antifa. We know that they're a lot more than an idea. We know that Joe Biden called them an idea last night, but that's not the case. They've got t-shirts and hoodies. They've got, patches. They've got organizations and websites and all sorts of communities that are sort of built out, these little cells that are sort of scattered around the country. A lot of people on Twitter have been documenting this. Andy NGO has been covering this every day to, an amazing extent on Twitter. So check him out if you have any doubt about that. But the idea that Antifa is an idea is not accurate, right? This is an organized group. And so the Proud Boys are a response to that. And I've been saying this on this channel for a very long time. I've been saying that when they're burning down buildings, when they are wrecking, used car lots, when Wendy's are being torched on a nightly basis, when they're shooting back at cops, this is all going to escalate. I've been saying this for years now. If something like this is popping up on the left, there is going to be a response on the right, and both groups are wrong. Both groups are not contributing to any positive dialogue or any, moving the ball forward in a helpful direction for the country. They're just not. Antifa's not doing it. The Proud Boys are not doing it. I think both groups should be totally condemned and totally disavowed. And the fact that neither one of these candidates could do that is just so depressing. It's so ridiculous that these are the two people who are potentially going to be in charge. Or if we don't get a president from one of these two, we're going to have Nancy Pelosi, right, who's going to be appointed from the House of Representatives. So, not ideal. Not our A team, I think, America, but that's all right. We got to work with what we work with. So again, back to the Proud Boys. Are they white supremacists? Are they, these types of individuals who want to see one race and the end of all of the other races, white people supreme and everyone else is below them? Well, we start looking through that, right? And we find that the Proud Boys president is not even a white guy. This is who we're talking about, Enrique Tarrio. Enrique Tarrio, he's the leader of the right-wing Proud Boys group, he said specifically that they will, well, we're going to get there. He was the Afro-Cuban president of the Miami chapter of the alt-right white nationalist organization and is now the national president. So he also served as the Florida director of Latinos for Trump, and you can go find his profile on afrocubaweb.com. So apparently this guy is the president of the Proud Boys, and it's not even a Caucasian individual. This is somebody who is Cuban, and he's Afro-Cuban. Okay, so is this really a white national organization? it's hard to make that conclusion when the president is a non-Caucasian person. So, this is why we like to look into the facts a little bit more. You can take what you will from that. To me, it's really hard to make the leap that the president of an organization who is non-Caucasian is advocating for white supremacy in the United States. Doesn't make a lot of sense. Well, the Proud Boys came up last night, so we have a response from Enrique Tarrio, and he said this. He said, although I'm excited about our mention on the debate stage, I am not taking this as a direct endorsement from the president. He did an excellent job and was asked a very pointed question. The question was a reference to white supremacy, which we are not. Him telling the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by is what we have always done. I'm extremely proud of my president's performance tonight. And he says, hey, sugar tots, I ain't white and I ain't a fascist. So, this is what they stand for. I feel like I've done this a million times and it's cringe to do it again, but Proud Boys denounce communism, socialism, fascism, Antifa, racism, and any other ism that is discriminatory or authoritarian. Wanted to say that before Twitter takes out this account. So, that's the president's, the president of the Proud Boys. That's his own statement on this issue. I still think Donald Trump could have easily condemned them. Not trying to make excuses for the guy, but a little bit more information about what he was specifically not disavowing is, I think, important. I think it's relevant. There's a lot of people all over the social media feeds who are saying Donald Trump did not disavow the white supremacists, which he didn't. I mean, I didn't hear him say that in the debate, but a little bit more context on who the Proud Boys are, I think, sheds a little bit more light on what was happening in that conversation. All right, the next part of the debate that I want to get to before we get to questions, well, we got a couple more. It's going to be a long show, so hang tight. But the next story I want to talk about is the Rittenhouse, the Rittenhouse thing that happened last night. Now, Rittenhouse was not mentioned by name, but there was a portion of this conversation where Donald Trump does not disavow the Proud Boys or the white supremacists. The very next day, Joe Biden comes up and says Donald Trump didn't disavow the white supremacists. And then in that, we've covered Kyle Rittenhouse's case here very, very in-depth. Some of our most popular, highly viewed videos are the Kyle Rittenhouse story because it is highly interesting. But this is something where they're using his imagery and connecting him to white supremacists. So this is an issue, right? Everything that a white person does or says somehow is being transformed into this issue of white supremacy. I haven't seen any of that evidence again in the Kyle Rittenhouse case. Haven't seen it. This was a young kid who was just going there to do something that he thought would be helpful, and then he got wrapped into this whole ordeal that he's going through. So Joe Biden releases this Twitter statement today saying that...
Are you willing tonight
here's what we got.
to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
So there it was.
Are
That
you
was
prepared
Kyle
to
Rittenhouse.
specifically
do it?
I
would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what do you...
So they use Kyle Rittenhouse, and so this is the actual clip. This is Kyle Rittenhouse in Joe Biden's ad that he posted on Twitter a few hours ago saying, as we saw in Kenosha, that's Kyle Rittenhouse, and he's certainly highlighting that he's a white supremacist. Again, I have not seen any evidence of that. I mean, I just haven't seen any evidence. If anybody has any evidence of that, I would love to see it. I'd love you to send it over to tips@rrlawaz.com or send it to me at Twitter @RobertGrulerESQ. Would love to see evidence of that, but I just haven't seen it. So what's happening now is that attorney Todd McCurdy, who is working with Kyle Rittenhouse, is indicating that they are going to be filing a defamation lawsuit against the Biden campaign unless the Bidens actually retract that statement. So here is this tweet from Tom McCarty. Presidential candidate says Joe Biden defamed Kyle Rittenhouse by suggesting that this video, he is a white supremacist. The left will just not stop. I'm working on a retraction demand now for Joe Biden and his campaign. And there are a number of attorneys who are working on this case. We have McCurdy, we've got Ron Coleman, who is also working on it, and then Ellen Wood. They are pursuing a libel case against Joe Biden and the Biden campaign. We have Marina Medvin, who is also representing Rittenhouse, said in a statement, there was absolutely no evidence, not even a pinch, of this defamatory accusation of my client, Kyle Rittenhouse, as a white supremacist. So this label is getting expanded massively. I mean, everybody is being looped into this category for one reason or another. In fact, well, we're not going to go there. This is something that I think should be reserved for the actual white supremacists. If everybody's a white supremacist, that waters down the real white supremacists. Okay. We do want to do something about those people. But if everybody is a white supremacist suddenly, then nobody is a white supremacist anymore. And this type of language, I have a lot of issue with this type of language being used in both directions. Okay. It's very vitriolic language. It's not good. I think it actually raises the temperature level in the country. It just angers everybody, and the water starts boiling even hotter, and it's not good. So this type of language isn't good. When Trump does it, it's not any good. When he says sheriffs endorse him, not any good. When he says Joe Biden said super predator, not any good. We want to sort of cool down the tension so we can have a productive conversation about what needs to happen in our country. All right. If you're a regular of this channel, thanks for being here. If not, hit the subscribe button. But we have been talking about Breonna Taylor for a long time. A lot of stories about that particular case. And there was some new story that came out today. We're going to tell you a little bit about that. But her name actually came up in the debate last night, which was interesting. I was not expecting that. I thought this was going to be all very topical level, high level overview type of information. And in fact, we got some pretty good stuff from at least specific questions about Breonna Taylor. So this clip is with Chris Wallace asking Vice President Joe Biden about this, and we're going to dissect that here in a little bit further.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide, you said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there is. There's systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples. And when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, to the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it. But we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
All right.
Yeah, and I think that was a good answer from Joe Biden. I mean, honestly, that was a good answer. He's calling for more transparency. He's saying most cops are good people, which I agree with. I think that all cops are bad people, are wrong on that. We want the good cops. We want more good cops. We want to elevate, promote, and glorify the good cops and punish and expel the bad cops. And it was a good answer, right? Whether you believe he means that or not, based on his 25 years record, passing laws that incriminate more people and justify, bigger prison populations and more arrests and longer time and mandatory minimums and all those things. That's a separate issue. But that answer was a fair answer. And I think that he's on the right track with that, right? I think most of America don't think that cops are just innately bad. And a lot of people are horrified and grossed out by what they see happening to black people around the country. So not a lot to analyze there from Joe Biden's answer, other than I think it was a fair answer, but it is a good segue into more of the Breonna Taylor case, because we learned today that the grand jury was not even presented with murder charges for Breonna Taylor. In other words, we've been talking about this a lot on this channel. Yesterday, we did the analysis. We were talking about whether or not the grand jury heard evidence that would allow them to indict the two officers who were not indicted. Did they hear that evidence, or did Daniel Cameron, the Attorney General, hold that evidence back and decide he wasn't even going to give them the option to charge it? So this story came from WDRB.com. It's a good story. They do an interview with Daniel Cameron, who is the Attorney General. And when he says when the charge of wanton endangerment was announced, Cameron said that he walked them through every homicide offense and also presented information that was available to the grand jury. And so that left the impression for us, and we talked about this yesterday, that the grand jury had discerned all of the possible options. So in other words, Daniel Cameron presented them everything. He said, look, this is the whole universe of potential charges you could charge these cops with. What do you want to do? Do you think they used self-defense? Do you think they murdered her? Do you think they also fired wantonly and recklessly? What do you guys want to do with this case? We thought that maybe was a possibility. But we learned today that's not exactly what happened. So in reality, the Kentucky Attorney General did not present the murder charges to the grand jury about the Breonna Taylor case. And the reason being, he said it was not appropriate to recommend charges for Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly, who was the first person through the door, and Detective Miles Cosgrove, whose bullet actually hit and killed Breonna Taylor. He says they fired shots into her apartment. He said, and he didn't think it was appropriate to recommend charges to the grand jury. That's from the article. He said, this is what Daniel Cameron said about the grand jurors. He said, they're an independent body. If they wanted to make an assessment about different charges, they could have done that. But our recommendation was that Mattingly and Cosgrove were justified in their acts and their conduct. So the Attorney General, Daniel Cameron, specifically made a charging decision on his own. That's the purpose of the grand jury. Daniel Cameron said, we're not even going to talk to them about those things. We've already reviewed it. We don't think there's enough evidence here. We're just going to give them enough evidence to convict them or to charge the other officer, Detective Brett Hankinson, with an offense, but not the two other guys. So the grand jury didn't even get the opportunity to consider those other possibilities. We fleshed out both of these arguments yesterday. Maybe he gave them very specific information. Maybe he gave them every information. As the Attorney General, as the fact finders, as the police, as the detectives, the law enforcement, they have all the cards. They control the entire investigation. They get to decide what is presented to the grand jury and what isn't. And so if they are selective with the evidence that the grand jury sees, of course they can't charge them. Of course they can't come to a conclusion because they didn't see any of the evidence. And we spent a lot of time on this yesterday talking about there is a grand juror who came out and he wants, or she wants, to come out and actually talk more about this case. They filed a motion in the circuit court yesterday with the request that the judge, one, allow them to speak and tell them what their rights are. Can they talk about these things without being under fear that Daniel Cameron, the Attorney General from Kentucky, is going to sue them or file a contempt of court charges or do something that is going to cause them even more hardship? They're asking for the court for permission to go and talk about these cases because the jurors who were sitting there in the grand jury panel who watched what Daniel Cameron did and then a couple days later saw what he said he did to the public, they don't match. They don't line up, and they want to come out and talk about that. And this is something that we've been saying for a long time, just stinks. It stinks from top to bottom. Detective Hankinson was going into the apartment without an escort. He went over to the hospital to talk to Mattingly. This investigation has been going on for 6-7 months now. It stinks badly. He says, Cameron said, the charge could not prove at trial beyond a reasonable doubt for wanton endangerment against Hankinson. The charge that we could prove was that Miles Cosgrove, Jonathan Mattingly were fired upon. They were justified in returning their fire, which that was his conclusion. He came to that conclusion. The grand jury didn't come to the conclusion. That's what the grand jury is for. So it's pretty clear to me he didn't give them any evidence about what all happened. And then he actually requested for additional time to release the transcripts.
Was hit.
So we have a clip here. Let's take a look at this clip.
Taylor was hit in the crossfire.
In your grand jury presentation, did you recommend any charges at all against either Mattingly or Cosgrove in the shooting of Breonna Taylor?
Well, basically, your question is about whether we recommended any murder charges against Cosgrove and Mattingly, and the answer is no. Ultimately, our judgment is that the charge that we could prove at trial beyond a reasonable doubt was for wanton endangerment against Mr. Hankinson.
Cameron says presenting the grand jury with a murder charge would not have been appropriate.
They're an independent body. If they wanted to make a assessment about different charges, they could have done that. But our recommendation was that Mattingly and Cosgrove were justified in their acts and their conduct.
And Cameron says he did tell the jury that the one witness who says he heard the officers announce their presence before knocking down the apartment door later changed his story.
We presented on all of the discrepancies in his testimony. We provided all of that information to the grand jury for them to hear and to process.
Bottom line, in the end, no one faces charges in connection to Taylor's death.
No one, again, doesn't realize the tragedy here, but that also does not give us a license to make charges that are not founded on the law and the facts.
Lawrence, that's what the grand jury is for, my friend. He's coming to conclusions without presenting the evidence to the grand jury. Then he comes around. It's so it's astounding to me that he is saying that a group of grand jurors who are not lawyers, who are probably just people who have zero experience with criminal law in general, he's saying, well, they could have come to an independent conclusion on their own. You're the one who runs the whole proceeding and presents the evidence. Do you think that a grand juror would have the wherewithal to stand up and say, hey, Mr. Cameron, I got a bunch of questions about all of these other issues that have come up here. Can you please go and investigate these things? I'd like to learn more about them. Do you think that any person sitting in that panel would have the confidence and the wherewithal to do that? Or would they trust the judge and the court clerk and the prosecutors who were there and all of the officers who were there who were conducting this show for them? Would they just say, hey, well, I mean, based on what we saw, they told us, they showed us everything. They showed us, they said they gave us all the evidence. Or if somebody raised their hand and said, hey, what about those two other cops? Did any of their bullets, go into the other person's apartment? Why are they not charged with wanton recklessness? Why? What happened to the other 5 bullets? We know that one bullet went from Cosgrove and killed Breonna Taylor, but what happened to the other 5 bullets? Were those Detective Hankinson's bullets? Well, there's a million questions, but did anybody ask those? We're going to find out. We thought we were going to find out today, but no, that is actually getting pushed over to Friday. So what happened, we were expecting it today, but the grand jury recordings will be delayed until noon on Friday. We thought we were going to get them today, so we're going to be listening to those and combing through those here soon enough. Cameron was the one who actually sought the 1-week delay. So it was originally ordered to be done today. He sought a 1-week delay to push it to next Wednesday, but the judge came back and said, no, you got to release it on Friday. The reason why he wanted that continuance is because he said it was necessary to protect the witnesses, the private citizens named in the recordings. He said his office wants to redact personal identifiers of any named person, and the judge granted the extension until noon on Friday. So we will see if that comes due on Friday. And if you're not already subscribed, hit the subscribe button because you want to be a part of that conversation, I would certainly imagine. All right, I want to try something new that I think okay, there it goes. So we were working on getting the live chat going, and I want to see if this actually shows up on our screen so that other people can see what we're talking about. So I don't know if this is working or not. Let me double check some of these adjustments here to see if this is working. All right, so we're going to do a refresh on that. So nope, that's not working. Forgive me, everybody. You can feel free to bail out of this if you want while I'm troubleshooting this, but I'm trying to, and I need to do this live because I'm presuming that there are people chatting. But what we're trying to do is get this, I can't figure it out. So this isn't going to work today. It doesn't look like I'm going to have to do some testing, but let's go over to the chat and see if there's any questions, any commentary, anything anybody wants to chime in on, and we'll pull up the chat over here and we'll get those questions answered. All right, so law and order statements were pretty solid, though. That no L&O organization supporting Biden was pretty good. Yeah, I mean, I think that is certainly interesting. It does seem like well, I'm trying to fix this here. All right, so let's get back to the question. So law and order statements were pretty solid. Hit the like button. Who do you think won the debate? That's a really hard question. I'm not real sure that there were any winners in that debate. I think that this is something that unfortunately is, hey, there it is. Jose Gamboa. We got a test. There it is. It's popping up on the screen now. Thanks for letting me test that. So who do I think won the debate? I'm not real sure. I don't think that either of them won. I think that the only people who won were probably the people who didn't watch it. I think it was a very evenly split thing. I do think Trump was a little bit overly aggressive. I don't think it was a particularly good look for him. I think Joe Biden actually exceeded expectations from a lot of what I have seen from him in recent memory. At least in a lot of the clips that I see, he doesn't seem to be super on his game, but he showed up well yesterday. He actually, appeared and was coherent for the entire night, and he liked. I think he did a fairly good job. So I thought that was. I thought it was kind of an even split. I don't think any minds were changed yesterday. I think this was something that is going to, kind of further entrench people into their own perspectives. And that's just sort of what comes of it. I did make a comment on Twitter, though, yesterday. I did actually say my initial thought was that Trump sort of lost the debate. That was my initial reaction. And then I was reading a lot of the commentary. I was watching Twitter. I was watching some of the news channels. I was watching some periscopes and things. And I was seeing a lot of the commentators saying that the debate 2 and 3 should be canceled. They should be off. They should be gone. And my thought was, I remember back when I was a kid, and when I would beat somebody in a sport, or I beat somebody in a game, or I would do something like that, they would not want to play again, right? Remember when you're 10 years old, you beat somebody in checkers, you say, you just smoke them in checkers, and they say, I don't want to play again. I don't want to play anymore. And that is because they lost. So when I saw that the Democrats were suddenly saying that the second and third debates should be gone, they should cancel those things, I thought, that means they lost this thing. Because if they were winning, if they felt very good about it, then I would just presume that they would want to come back and whoop his butt in the debates 2 and 3. But they didn't want to do that. And similarly, I didn't. When I lost, I didn't want to play again. And to me, that's what it felt like Joe Biden was doing. They were actually, or he wasn't doing it. I think his campaign actually came out today and said specifically that this was going to be. They were going to continue with the debates 2 and 3. So we'll see what happens. Why don't they mute the mic when it's a candidate's sole time? I did think that. So I was wondering if they were going to do that. And I saw a news article today that the debate commission may actually modify the rules. So I think in debates 2 and 3, they may actually try to cut the mic on those things. I would guess that Chris Wallace did not have that in the agreements. As you can probably imagine, there are lawyers from both sides of these campaigns really hashing out the rules of the debates prior to the debates taking place. So what happens is, they were talking about breaks every 30 minutes for Biden. We saw a lot of that material get leaked out. I think late yesterday before the debate, we saw what some of the terms were that these two people were negotiating about. And one of them was about breaks. One of them was about, doing an earpiece check. We saw a lot of that type of stuff. So I'm going to guess that in the stipulations, in the agreement between the two parties, they made an agreement that they were not going to cut mics. I'm sure that's in documents. I'm sure that's in writing someplace, but that was not something that we saw. Now that may change. So the debate commission may say, hey, look, enough of that. That was a disaster. They're right. It was a disaster. There's no question about that. It was not a good debate. It was one of the worst things I think I've ever seen ever. And I've seen a lot of bad TV. It was very, very bad, not productive. But so they may modify the rules. I think if Trump knows that they can shut his mic off, he may behave himself a little bit more, and they won't actually have to shut the mic off. And Joe Biden wasn't particularly well behaved either. He was calling him a lot of names, calling him a racist, calling him a clown, saying, shut up, man, shut up, man. So that was not particularly presidential anyways. People really like to dog on Trump because he's Trump, but we know who Trump is. Joe Biden, I think, he was a little bit ornery. He was a little bit, I think, not, friendly, happy-go-lucky Joe Biden. He was, I'm irritated, and it wasn't a particularly good look for him. All right, some other questions, some good questions coming in. Kier Hupak says, neither won in the end. I was utterly disappointed that Biden did avoid the important questions. Refusing to answer questions just means that he's got something to hide. Yeah, there were really no good questions. I mean, almost no good questions were being asked. And to me, it did, I got to be honest, it felt like a 2-on-1 to me, for sure. And so when I was thinking about this debate, I was thinking Donald Trump came out way too hot. From the very beginning, he was hot. He was going after Wallace. He was going after Biden. He started to interrupt him. This was clearly part of his game plan. And I think he sort of misread the room a little bit. He probably came into it with the perception that this was going to be a 2-on-1 thing. And I don't think he was wrong on that. I think it was a 2-on-1. Every time Donald Trump started going after Joe Biden about, Hunter Biden, or about some of these things, about Antifa, about the things that didn't look good for Joe Biden, Chris Wallace just jumped right in and almost kind of saved him a little bit. And then he gives Donald Trump condemned the Proud Boys, but he didn't give any condemnations to Joe Biden or the opportunities for that. So it felt like a 2-on-1 to me, but Donald Trump easily could have come out and been cordial and been friendly and said, hey, we're going to just treat this as a regular debate. When the tables turn, when Chris Wallace would have flipped from being a neutral arbiter moderating a discussion to somebody who is now almost openly advocating and framing questions and saving Joe Biden, then Donald Trump should have flipped that. There was a point in the debate where Chris Wallace asked Donald Trump, he said, hey, do you want to come sit down in my seat? You want to come down there and be the moderator? I think that an earlier version of Trump, a wittier version of Trump, or somebody, the 2016 version of Trump would have said back to Chris Wallace, no, why don't you just come up here? It sounds to me like you'd like to come up and stand up here next to Joe Biden. You want to do that? Happy to debate both of you if you'd like. That would have been one of those questions that really just sort of reframed the entire situation. But he didn't do that. He kind of got into it with Chris Wallace and then got into it separately with Joe Biden. I just didn't think it was that effective. It wasn't a particularly good look. Most of the public knows that Donald Trump is not a particularly, friendly, happy-go-lucky, let's talk about sunshine and rainbows and butterflies. That's not who he is. That's not his personality. And I wasn't expecting that. But what I saw last night was too much. It was too much Trump, right? We got to turn that down a little bit because it got into the point where it wasn't even productive at all. It was really concerning. I don't think he gave Joe Biden enough time to sort of dig himself into the holes that he would have dug himself into had Donald Trump just not kept interrupting him. So not a good look for him. Joe Biden, on the other hand, I can't say much about his performance either. I didn't hear any substantive questions. I don't think he answered anything that would make anybody change their minds to vote for him. I think he also came off as ornery, also came off as rude. Seemed a little bit scripted to me when he was doing that, the Beau Biden thing, It felt to me very fake. I don't think he looks particularly healthy. I think Donald Trump looked like he had a lot more natural energy than Joe Biden did. And, he looks to me like he's just not particularly healthy, and that's just a pure observation of his physicalities. I don't know, what his specifics are, but that was my take. All right, do you think going after Biden's son so much was a wise tactic? Mentioned once, okay, but wasn't it too much? Yeah, that's a good question. To me, it's hard to come to conclusions on that because I am somebody who is highly involved in politics, right? This is what I do for this show. We're talking about criminal justice reform every day here, but my day job is also, being pretty plugged into politics, a lot more local politics, a lot more learning about, the judges and the local elections. We have, a big county attorney race here. And so I'm just kind of naturally plugged into politics. So I know about Hunter Biden. Right? I know what that story says, or I've seen the headlines about it. I don't know specifically about it because I haven't really taken a deep dive into that, but I do know of it. And so I don't know what Trump was doing. I don't know if he was trying to educate people on this issue or if he was just attempting to, just alert people about it. Like if 10 million people Google Hunter Biden, that's a pretty big win for the Trump campaign, right? And if 10 million people Google the Proud Boys, it's a pretty big win for the Biden campaign. So they're just trying to, just put those little nuggets into people's minds so that they can go out and find more information about it. Now, if you have never heard about Hunter Biden and you're watching this debate and Joe Biden just goes from talking about his dead son, who was a hero and died of brain cancer, I think it was, and Donald Trump's response to that back is, oh yeah, well, what about your cocaine head other son, who got discharged? To me, that's kind of a calloused thing. Donald Trump could have said easily, listen, Joe, I know you lost a son, terrible thing. No president should ever, or no person should ever lose a child. Parents are supposed to go before their children do. So sorry for your loss. That being said, we got to talk about your other son, Hunter Biden. There's a different way to sort of address that. And he just went right after Hunter Biden, but that's what Trump is. That's what Trump does. So it is, it's just part of his style. Pete said, hey, just wondering, have you covered Trump's comments regarding white supremacists? Yeah, Pete, we did. We covered that on today's show, so just scroll on back. Michael Phelps says, had to go after the other son because his other son actually was a good person that went in the armed forces. Trump's kids are worse than Biden. Didn't attack them, Apache King says. Yeah, so it could have gone either way, right? You could easily say Joe Biden was above the fray on that. Internationally, his son is a major international scandal. It would be like if Bush had a son that suddenly ended up on the board of an Iraqi oil company receiving a significant pay. Yeah. I mean, it sounds to me like there's something there, but I haven't taken a deep dive into that. Warborn says, apex predator, make America great again, with the addition of having no relevancy for the job other than his father's involvement. Yeah, that's really where it comes into play. And listen, I know, we have this ruling class that exists without any question of a doubt, right? We all would agree on that. And this is why when the story came out about Joe Biden, Mitt Romney comes out from the Republicans and he says, well, no, that's inappropriate. Kids should be off limits. Well, that's because Mitt Romney has all his kids doing the same thing. They're all part of this upper echelon oligarchy that is really just controlling everything and making a ton of money, all at our expenses, as far as I can tell. All right, at least Trump acknowledged he knows who Antifa is. When Trump gets 4 more years, Antifa will have maybe 5 cities to choose from. Otherwise, come check us out, Antifa, if your coworkers are here. Trump's kids didn't make millions. This is from Michael Phelps. That's because Trump's kids didn't make millions of dollars while Biden was vice president working for an electric company in Russia, where they know nothing of power companies or even Russians. This is 100% right. I mean, we saw this with the Clinton Foundation. You remember that? The Clinton Foundation was making money hand over fist, and it was all this donation, for the Clinton Global Initiative and all this stuff. And then as soon as Hillary Clinton lost that election, the funds dried up. What happened with that? Well, it's because it wasn't about a charitable gift. It was about buying influence. It was about getting your name on a list. It was about being a part of that inner circle. You make a big fat donation so that when Hillary is presumably the president, which everybody thought she was going to be, you get to call in those favors. Hey, remember when we gave you $2 million or $7 million or a couple $100,000 or here and there? These politicians, they go and speak. They get $400,000, $250,000 for a half-hour speech or for an hour speech. What do you think that is? Do you think that is because they're going to get $250,000 of value out of that speech? No, it's because these people are buying influence. That's all this is. When they get into power, they're going to give back some of that, right? It's quid pro quo all day. They're just doing it under the name of an honorarium for a speaking engagement. So all of the kids for all of these, oligarchs are all doing the same thing. And Donald Trump and Joe Biden, I don't think that they're exempt from that. All right, some other comments. The Proud Boys from Hilly Dilly. The Proud Boys are not white supremacists because there's a lot of them who are not white. Yeah, we covered that a little bit today. I think the president is not white of that organization. It's a Afro-Cubano. So buying access. Can you talk about the New York Times of Trump's tax data disclosure? So I haven't looked into that a whole lot. The stuff I've seen is very topical. I haven't looked at his tax returns. I haven't seen any formal indictments or anything like that. To me, the idea that a billionaire is not paying any taxes is just par for the course. I mean, to me, if the allegations are true, if Donald Trump didn't pay any money in taxes, in personal income tax, according to his whatever he files, I don't know much about it, but if he didn't, that's the point of being a billionaire. You get to be a billionaire by not paying taxes. Nobody wants to pay taxes. I don't want to pay taxes. Taxes, I've gone over it on this show for a long time. I think taxes are about as close to theft as you can get. I understand that some of it is necessary, but we talk about the property theory of labor and this idea that when you are, when you're mixing your labor with the things that you're doing in the world you create property. And so your property is sort of an extension of your life. And if they're taking away your property, which is your money, they're kind of taking away your life. So when you go to these big cities or these big states where 50+% of your income is being literally stripped away from you, you're trading your life, your time for that money by mixing your labor with the world. And that turns into money. You take that money and that is an extension of your life. You use that to go empower your life. You use that to go, put your kids through school and take care of your elderly parents and all those things. So when the government just rips half of it off, in my mind, they're stealing a part of your life. And what we want to do as Americans is provide value and provide, good service and create things for other people. And we want to not pay taxes on our consumption of products, or minimal taxes. So when a billionaire is doing that, they all do it, right? That's all the millionaires, all the billionaires do it. They use all the loopholes. They have huge, powerful attorneys. They set up these things called family offices, where they create these separate companies that they fill with financial advisors and other people who are going to help them specifically avoid paying taxes. Now, just because Donald Trump may not individually be paying, taxes to the federal government, I will tell you this. We run a decent sized small business here, and we have an awesome team of people, and we pay taxes. It really, really hurts our ability to grow as a business. We pay so many taxes. We can't hire people because of, if we took that money that we would have otherwise been paying to the government, if we could hire more people, we could, get more resources, help more people in the world. So the taxation thing, I think, is kind of a nothing burger, in my opinion. That's why I haven't looked much into it. But if Trump gets indicted or something like that, then we'll revisit that topic for sure. Taxes are theft when you bring it down to its base components. It's just seen as justified theft because everyone utilizes social infrastructure. Like the video guys from Hilly Dilly, the taxes rendered by way of employee payouts as well. Yeah, I mean, just because he's not, he may not be signing a check that says it's going to the IRS at any point in time doesn't mean that he's not paying taxes. Everybody who books a room in his hotel is paying a hotel tax. Every single person who works for him, there's payroll tax, employee tax, health insurance, all these different things are all taxed to death. So the organization, the Trump empire that he's built, his businesses are paying insane amounts of taxation in different ways. But what people like to do is point to one specific thing. So again, it's taking it out of context. And Trump kind of answered this question last night, and he's using the financial terms. He said like, hey, we got more assets. We're perfectly leveraged right now. We can go get loans. He's speaking, so he's talking in a business way, which the American people, I don't think, really understand. It's sort of over their heads. People just want to know, what's the number? What's the number that you paid to the government? Did you pay more than me or less than me? Wait a minute, you only paid $750? That's not fair. I paid $5,000 last year. So therefore, you're ripping us off. But they don't realize all of the other taxes that are being generated, all of the other revenue, which is being taxed at every step of the way as it's going through the process, right? You book a hotel, you go stay at the hotel, you go and you buy a bunch of stuff while you're traveling, the airlines. So we're trying to create some economic activity. The way to do that is with lower taxes. And Joe Biden specifically said last night, much to my dismay, that he was going to roll back the Trump tax cuts. So the tax rate will go from 21 to 28 or whatever he said, which hurts small business. It hurts the little guys. Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, all of these mega billionaires, they're going to be fine. It's the little guys who get the brunt of the tax burden, and they're just going to raise that up on us again, which is unfortunate. All right, so no one is forced to pay taxes. You only pay taxes if you buy taxable items or earn an income, neither of which you have to do. Yeah, that's true, right? If you don't make any money, don't have any taxes to pay. All right. Ma the Fox says that Trump did pay $5.2 million in carry forwards to the IRS 2016, 2017. And it was even stated in the New York Times article itself. He's just losing enough money to pay little. Yeah. And that's the other thing too, right? In a business, if you reinvest your money into growth, then you can make the argument with the IRS that's not, that's part of the business, right? That's growing the business. And that's good. The IRS wants to give you those incentives. Keep growing, hire more people, build more things, do great work, grow the business. When the government comes back and they say, hey, that money that you were going to use to expand your business, we're going to take that because we need that to do something stupid, which they do. I don't know where any of this money goes, but they need to take that for themselves. That hurts us. We can't go hire people. We can't go open up a new office. We can't expand into California. We can't do things that are going to be helping more people who need our help. So it is very unfortunate. Zach Wallace says, I've been religiously following the show. I love the level of objectivity that you strive for. Thank you. Thank you, Zach. I appreciate that. I try to be as objective as I can. Of course, I have opinions, and those are going to spill over into the commentary, but I try to give a fair shake to both sides, show everybody, the pros and cons of both sides, and sort of lay it out, and then you can be free to make your own conclusions. And so on that note, everybody, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. I know probably most of you are experiencing some debate fatigue, as am I. And so tomorrow we'll be back here at the same time. It's going to be 4 p.m. Arizona time, 7 p.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. Pacific time. And we'd love to have you here. We love these conversations. Super fun to take a look at some of these questions and actually, answer them and have these discussions. They're great questions. I appreciate you being here. I'm going to try to work on maybe doing a call-in type of technology. So now that I got this chat box working, I'm feeling pretty saucy. So I may try to get a call-in show going at some point. I think the channel's probably a little bit too small for that right now. Probably would not have enough activity on the call-in line, which is why I'm going to ask for your help. If you can, please share the show, send it to a friend. Let's get some more people joining us on the conversation, because these chats, I think, are so important in helping move the ball forward. The more we can talk about these issues, the more that we can really dissect what is going on and hold everybody accountable. That is the real crux of why this is going to work, is because we want to hold people accountable. There's too much fake news from both sides. There's too much political spin going on from both sides. Let's go to the sources, the primary sources. What do they say about these issues? We'll do some analysis here, and then hopefully we can see some meaningful change that we can all be happy with. But we'll be back here tomorrow. Thank you so much once again for being here. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Have a wonderful evening.